This video is on the order of operations, which I think is a pretty important topic because I've worked with a lot of students who can do everything else correctly in a problem, but then they do an exponent or multiply or add in the wrong order, and so they get the answer wrong. Okay, and the problem with wrong answers is that students often feel like they're not very good at math when really they are. They're just doing it in the wrong order. Okay, so I think this topic is pretty important. And by the end of this video, hopefully you're able to understand what that order is supposed to be, and you can use it to simplify expressions, and also use it to correctly evaluate formulas. Like take a formula, plug some numbers in, and get the right number answer. Okay, so what the order of these operations is, okay? I don't know if you were taught PEMDAS or PEMDAS, or please excuse my dear Aunt Sally, or I've heard, half a dozen different ways of remembering this string of letters, but that's what it is. Whatever you've been taught, use it, okay? And what it means is parentheses, go first, and then exponents, like squaring, cubing, things like that. And then you multiply and divide from left to right, and these go together. And then you add and subtract from left to right. I should even put like that so you remember you do it from left to right. Okay, so here's an example of something that I see on Facebook every once in a while. Okay, the problem is, what's the answer to this? 5 plus 5 plus 5 minus 5 plus 5, let's see here, plus 5 minus 5 plus 5 times 0. And what a lot of people do is they just do everything from left to right, which is a common default because we read left to right. The problem is that when people get down to the end, they then multiply by 0 and get 0 as the answer, which is the most common answer, but it's not the correct answer. So let me kind of use these order of operations. There are no parentheses and there are no exponents. Okay, so I will multiply and divide from left to right. And the only thing I can multiply is 5 times 0. And 5 times 0 is 0. So I'll rewrite this expression, which is often a good idea to rewrite things after you've done each step, to be very careful. If you can do several steps at once, that's fine. But if you're all not sure, it's good to rewrite it out. Okay, so now I will add and subtract from left to right. So 5 plus 5 plus 5 is 15, minus 5 is 10, plus 5 is 15, plus 5 is 20, minus 5 is 15, plus 0 is 15. So the answer I get is 15, and that is the answer to this question. Okay, let me give you a few more examples. Let's take something like 20 minus 3 times 2 squared. Now keep in mind that the order is this. Okay, if it helps you to write that at the top of your paper, go ahead and do it. Now the first thing we'll do is parentheses. There are no parentheses in this problem. And so the next thing we'll move on is to exponents. There are exponents. Okay, so 2 is the exponent. Now you have to ask yourself the question of what is being squared. Is it 2 or 3 times 2? And the answer is it's just 2. Okay, it's just that one number, unless there's parentheses that tell you it's more than one thing. Okay, so I will square 2, 20 minus 3 times. Now 2 squared means 2 times itself, or 2 times 2 is 4. And I have 20 minus 3 times 4. The next thing I'll do is multiply and divide from left to right. And 3 times 4 is 12. Okay, again, it's helpful to write down each step to make sure that you don't make any mistakes. Now now I will add and subtract from left to right. 20 minus 12 is 8. And so the answer of this would be 8. Okay, those order of operations are really important because otherwise you do this in a different order and come up with some different answer. Okay, let me give you one more example of simplifying expressions. What about something like 3x minus 4 plus 2x minus 10 times 2. Okay? Now, although these problems can get very long and often look scary or daunting, just keep in mind that if you keep the order of the operations correct, it's not that difficult. It may be long, but it's not difficult. Okay, the first thing is parentheses. Now there are parentheses in this problem, and usually it means do what's inside the parentheses first, but I can't combine x and 4 because they're not like terms. Okay, so what I'll do is I will do the other parenthesis thing. Sorry. So what this parenthesis means is to multiply. And I'll come to that later on when I do the multiply step. The E is for exponents. There's nothing I can really, do exponents with. So the next thing I'll do is multiply and divide from left to right. So I'll multiply or distribute the 3. 3 times x is 3x, and 3 times negative 4 is negative 12. Okay, make sure you keep that negative in there. I know that a lot of students struggle with negatives, so be very careful with negatives. Plus 2x, multiplying. So 10 times 2 is 20. Okay, so I've multiplied and divided everything I can from left to right. And the last thing to do is to add and subtract. Okay, now when we do this, we have to make sure that we combine the like terms. Okay, and the reason because 3x and negative 12 are not the same. This one has 3 x's and this has no x's. It's just the number 12. So if I have 3 x's and I add 2 more x's, how many x's do I have? And the answer is I have 5 x's. Okay? If I take negative 12 and I subtract 20, I have negative 12, and I go more negative by taking away 20, then what I'm left with is a negative 32. Okay? And I can't go any further because these are not like terms, and so this is my answer in simplest form. Okay? Now, evaluating some formulas. Okay, one that I think is pretty simple is area equals base times height, what we use for typically rectangles, but this is the same formula that would work for parallelograms, and you can also use this really for squares because all squares are rectangles and parallelograms. Okay, so what if the base was 2 and the height was 5? Okay, and in for the B, I will plug 2. And for the h, I will plug 5. 2 times 5. Now, when two numbers or two variables are written next to each other with nothing in between them, what that means is multiply. So 2 times 5 is 10, and that would be my answer. I'm not really given any units. Okay, one a little more complicated, that formula for a trapezoid. Now, we'll go over these formulas much more in depth later in the year. I wouldn't expect you to remember them from this video. We'll spend a lot more time on rectangles and parallelograms and trapezoids and other shapes like that. Okay, now what if the height was 4 and B1 is 3 and B2 is 5? Okay, I will just plug these numbers in. Okay, so the h goes there, the B1 goes there, the B2 goes there. I'll just plug it in with the numbers. 1/2. Now again, numbers and letters next to each other means multiply. 4, and then 3 plus 5. Okay. This one's a little more complicated. I'm going to go and write down my acronym. Okay, there are parentheses, and that parentheses means do what's inside the parentheses first. So I will add 3 and 5 together first. 3 plus 5 is 8. Okay, and then, let's see here. There's no exponents. Multiply and divide. Now, everything here is to multiply, so I will multiply left to right. 1/2 times 4 is 2, and 2 times 8 is 16. And so the answer to this would be 16. Okay, one last problem is pretty complicated, probably one of the most difficult formulas that we'll use this year, which is the distance formula. Okay, this is just with some numbers already plugged into it instead of giving you the true distance formula. And I'll have y, I'm sorry, I'll start with x. X be 4 and y be negative 7. Okay, so if I plug things in, I have, let's see here, the x goes in with the x, and the y goes where the y is. So I have 4 minus 2 squared plus negative 7 plus 3 squared. Okay, so 4 minus 2. Now, okay, the acronym. Okay, parentheses first. Things inside parentheses. So I will do 4 minus 2 first, and I get 2. And negative 7 minus 3 is negative 4 squared. Okay, everything inside parentheses has been done. Now I will do exponents. Now there are things being raised to exponents. Okay, so here, what is being raised to the second power? Well, that's easy. It's 2. So 2 squared, or 2 to the second power, is 4. 2 times 2. And the next one is what's being squared over here? Well, it's negative 4. Okay, and negative 4 times negative 4 is equal to a positive 16. Okay, keep in mind that a negative times a negative is a positive. So I add 16, and so 4 times 6, so 4 plus 16 is 20. Okay, and although you could plug this into a calculator and get a decimal answer, you could simplify the square root, but I think I'll just leave it like this for now as the square root of 20. Okay, so this video has been on the order of operations, what that order is, PEMDAS, how to use that to simplify expressions, and how to use it to evaluate formulas.